Nothing will ever compare to the unbridled excitement I had waiting for the release of South Park. The Stick of Truth. I was 12 years old at the time in my first year of high school and probably at the height of my South Park fandom. I was collecting the old plushies, I would rewatch the movie on DVD constantly, and just wanted to consume as much of the franchise as humanly possible. And with that, it led me wanting something. A good South Park game to play. I got the original PlayStation shooter for my birthday one year, along with Sonic 06, happy birthday me, but I could not comprehend that thing. I could not get past level 2. So as soon as the Stick of Truth was announced, I was immediately on board. I don't care how many delays I gotta wait through. Well wait, okay, I didn't mean it. And boy was I lucky to have it released the same month as my birthday. Means I gotta wait a whole 4 weeks before I could play it. Wowee. I adored that game, I had hundreds of hours in it, which is really surprising considering how relatively short it is for an RPG. But I would replay it constantly, running through the campaign over and over again as all the different classes. Loved it so much that it was even one of the first Let's Plays I'd ever uploaded to this channel. This is where I'd show it, but I think I got so embarrassed by them that I wiped them off the face of the earth, so enjoy this review of its sequel, The Fractured Butthole, instead.
Me and my friend were talking during class one day about what a sequel to the game would be like, and we both agreed that if the game were to ever get a sequel, it should be about superheroes.
Alright, that's enough of that. Speaking of the sequel, also really enjoyed that one too. Wasn't a fan of all the changes, I think it lost a bit of its simplicity and it drags out a ton by the end. But for what it was, I saw it as nothing more but a worthy follow-up. You could just tell that Matt Stone and Trey Parker put so much work into these projects, making sure they were as amazing as they came out to ensure the franchise's gaming history could work itself out of the shovelware bins. And so with that, the question on everyone's mind was, what's next? Ninjas, Imagination Land, something entirely new? I can't wait. It feels like it's been forever since the last South Park game. Then we heard it was going to be 3D. Alright, seems like they made a big deal during the Stick of Truth's promotional speeches that a game replicating the show's unique art style would be the way to go moving forward, but okay.
We thought that they were finally capable of doing a game that looked just like the show. That was sort of the thing that excited us, is you could sit there and play the game and be walking around the classroom or walking around Cartman's backyard, and if someone was to walk in the room and watch you play the game, they would think you're watching an episode of South Park.
Whatever though, maybe they just want to tackle a gameplay style that wouldn't be possible in merely 2 dimensions. I'm sure that isn't an indicator of the quality here. I'm positive they're approaching this with the same level of love and care that they pride themselves on.
I hope we don't get a fucking 4 on GameSpot, that's what I hope. That'll piss me off.
Well, you didn't get a 4. It was apparent from the very first trailer that South Park Snow Day would be a budget title. It was no surprise to see them advertise the fact that it was $30 so heavily, because if it were a full $60, I think there would be riots on the street because this shit isn't worth it. I was cautiously optimistic for Snow Day, admittedly. Not because I saw any glimmer of hope in what they showed off, but instead because I didn't care that much. Seemed to be an open-ish world hack and slash. The visuals looked uninteresting, and they never really did much to convey to potential players why they needed to get this game, what made it stand apart from others, and ultimately, why it was a worthy successor to the Stick of Truth and Fractured Butthole, why it was worth changing genres. I will say, however, the biggest thing that got me worried about Snow Day was the lack of enthusiasm on Matt and Trey's part. For the other games, despite feeling as if they each took forever to come out, you could always count on the creators being there to talk about it, where they made it evident that they were giving these things their all. As much work as they would any other of their projects. But with Snow Day, we didn't really get that. There was the occasional promotional video on the South Park YouTube channel where Trey looked as if he were on a completely different planet, and for the IGN preview, he was somewhere else altogether. I'm not trying to get conspiratorial and say that they just weren't all that invested in this project, but at the same time, it's undeniable that the hype around this game was next to non-existent. Now it's out and, well, people don't like it, to put it simple. I honestly wasn't gonna get this game. I didn't get sent no dang free code and they didn't really give me any reason to think it was worth checking out. But then I got bored at 2 AM and thought, fuck it. And so now here I am. Is that really what the start screen looks like? Anyways, I suppose with that, it's time to delve into South Park Snow Day to see if it's a passionate is it a disastrous is it good or bad? Also, I
We
got
have
a
an
little announcement to
announcement to
make.
make.
For years now, I've been fighting back against uploading compilation videos on my main channel just because I don't like muddying things with what's new and what's old. But I've really been interested recently in doing bigger compilations that compile all these different videos about the same topic, because a lot of folks out there tell me that they like to listen to my videos when they sleep or when they're working or studying, and so I finally settled on what I wanted to do, and that's create Midnight Mark. These are going to be re-edited and touched up versions of some of my older videos, compiling them together so you can listen to them in the background doing whatever you do, I don't know. I've edited out a majority of the loud noises and found ways to connect them all together, so they're basically just mega videos. For example, on there right now I have a 5-hour Five Nights at Freddy's video which compiles my original retrospective of all the games along with the books and the movie to try and make it one big seamless video. So if that sounds like something that might interest you, I plan on uploading every week. But let me know if there's any specific compilations you'd want to see on there, and be sure to subscribe. I got a bunch of really high quality stuff made for it, like a whole new softer look along with a new intro that I think looks fantastic. So subscribe to Midnight Mark, and thanks for the support. One thing I appreciate about the opening here is that they bothered getting South Park Studios to actually animate it in-house. Really, for the duration of this quite lengthy opener, you could completely treat it like another episode of the show, where we see a massive blizzard head towards town, with Cartman praying to God to please let the town get covered in the most snow it's ever had, just so he doesn't have to go to school. It's an incredibly endearing idea for a South Park game on the surface. Matt and Trey always wanted to invoke a similar feeling to Earthbound with these, where you would play as a blank kid traversing this town by yourself, things seeming so much grander than they actually are in reality. And this concept lends itself perfectly towards that. With all the parents snowed in and unable to go anywhere, it makes the entire town the kids' playground, able to do whatever they want with little to no interference. I'm not really into them going right back to the wizard stuff with no explanation. Fractured but Whole set a nice precedent where you would assume each new game would tackle a different genre from the last, but I have to assume they just went with this for marketing reasons, which is a little sad. Everyone's designs are simply one-to-one copied from the Stick of Truth, kinda aided in the feeling that this game didn't know what it wanted to do to stand apart. I'm also not too clear on why they thought doing a COVID parody would be the way to go for their brand new game. From the way everyone in-universe talks about the snowstorm, it's pretty evident this is meant to be a take on COVID, you know, which they already did. But now everyone is stuck in their houses and toilet paper has become the new form of currency. Biting. But really all of that is kind of irrelevant. Again, it's just an excuse to have all the kids in town playing with each other again after the new kid ruined the previous two by getting way too OP. Yeah, despite the change in genre and, well, dimension, Snow Day is still following the events of the RPGs. You're once again put right back at square one with everybody being incredibly pissed off at you. And so now it's time to join the Grand Wizard Cartman's faction. Again. As Clyde has informed Eric that the Elven army led by Kyle is planning an attack on their kingdom. They're not really after anything this time, but and with that, we're dropped into a short tutorial. And by short, of course, I mean 15 minutes long. I guess it's to teach us how to deal with this newfangled dimension. I like the idea for it, though. You go on a short journey to the school where you have to walk through the destroyed building, Mr. Mackey locked inside and the game slowly telling you more and more about what you can do in this new adventure. I'm a little sad that you don't get to explore it all here, but whatever, I get it's something new, more linear. Overall, the tutorial is a decent time, but I think it really has the potential to make people have a super negative first impression.
Hey, what the fuck?
Return fire! Return fire!
What? Who is that? That can't be Matt or Trey. It sounds like someone doing a bad Eric Cartman impression. I think this literally might just be one of the developers inserting their own impression. Okay. There's something I'm going to talk about way more later, but this is definitely one of those games where you start incredibly underpowered. Painfully so. And so having to control the new kid with only 2 measly weak weapons with little to no difference in how you approach each fight kind of shows how quickly it takes for this game to become repetitive. It's not a good sign when I start getting bored of the main cycle during the tutorial. But on the more positive side, your character control's alright. Seeing how they run in 3D will never not be jarring, but turning, jumping, all feels fine. Except for running. Running fucking sucks. I think I was late to realizing this game was most likely intended to be played with a keyboard and mouse. Honestly, what it reminded me of while playing was Fortnite of all things.
Damn, I'm kinda nasty.
But it does this annoying ass thing where your character's walking speed is incredibly slow, with you having a run button and stamina meter. Really like that you have infinite stamina when not in battle too, that's a great feature. However, you can only run while pressing directly in front of you, meaning if you want to run to the left or right to dodge shit, you're fucked. You're gonna go right back to walking. Again, this wouldn't be a big deal playing with a keyboard and mice since you can more easily move the camera while multitasking, but on a controller, where the run is attached to the circle button, it makes it really obnoxious to have to use one finger to hold that down while using your thumb to move the camera. Always disrupted me, fucking pissed me off. But whatever, controls still are fine for the most part. Combat feels alright even if the bow takes forever to use and does little to no damage. But things seem to be at the very least decent so far. And with that, we're dropped into the hub world. You can customize your new kit here, although there's not much variety when you start. I went with Fantasia Mickey Mouse. You can also choose your weapons with Tolkien. Again, one option. But what you're supposed to do here is talk to Eric, who will give you a list of 5 missions to conquer. And upon choosing, you walk to this little snow burrow, which will load you in. This is not what I did, though. I ran around this hub world for ages seeing what I could find. Answers nothing. For some reason, they let you walk around this giant-ass hub world outside of Cartman's backyard. And while it's nowhere near on the level of what the others had to offer, I still appreciate having the ability to walk around Eric's street. If there were something to actually find. I understand that of course we're not going to have the amount of freedom that's expected from an RPG, but at the same time, it's South Park in 3D. Of course I'd want to run around this place. They've had a long, almost 30-year history to pull from. It was cool getting to explore the kids' bedrooms and see all the props they've accumulated over the past 25 seasons, listening to the different tracks Trez produced on the radio. Again, it's something very pedantic to get over, but sadly, this only comes from the two of them having set the bar so high. So when it's not here, it ends up feeling as if something is missing. From everything I've seen thus far, it appears that the best phrase I can use to describe their riding and set up a snow day is South Park on autopilot. There's no real effort here to break new ground, to do something that will blow people's minds. Not that it needs to, but if their goal here is to do something at a much smaller scope, then the last thing I would want to do is make any references to their previous material that actually tried to do something groundbreaking. And succeeded, mind you. I know I'm complaining a lot, which doesn't seem fair considering I haven't even, started level 1 and stuff. But I really think I was mostly disappointed to see that Snow Day just kinda starts. Throws you in with little to no fanfare or spectacle apart from that janky but admittedly neat transition from 2D to 3D. I don't know, Stick of Truth and Fractured But Whole just had incredibly strong openings in my opinion, so this one starting out with a drawn out baby tutorial and not even being all that funny to make up for it, seems like a sign of things to come. Alright, level 1 end. Okay, I've avoided the white elephant in the room for long enough. Don't know what I'm talking about? Well, I want to show you something. Here is what the tutorial of Snow Day looks like. Here's the hub world we just saw. Now here's level 1. Notice anything? I get it's called Snow Day and all, but this really seems like an idea that was better in concept than execution because all these fucking places look the same. Wanna know how I know this? Every stage I just showed you, completely random. This is level 1, this is the tutorial, and this is the hub world. Fantastic. And as we'll get into later, this game is being sold with a season pass, with the promise of future DLC stuff down the line. So it sucks to know that they're all gonna have to adhere to this Snow Day gimmick, when it would be way cooler to actually visit more places from the show, or at least a couple areas that aren't just completely white. You were almost never inside buildings in Snow Day. It is primarily an outdoor adventure, and so after a while your mind grows bored of looking at the same theme over and over again with little to nothing breaking up the monotony of a screen that's 95% just fucking white. South Park has snow, I get that, but it's never been on this level. Everywhere blends together and I'm so baffled as to how nobody on the team noticed this before making it the primary focus of the game. The N64 South Park game has better art direction than this, I'd argue. Anyway, so, to get back on our mission, we gotta find Kyle to put a stop to whatever plan he's enacting on Eric, and so... Oh, there, he is right there, cool. Here's where I gotta give Snow Day some props. I actually really do like the main idea behind each stage, and it's that at the start of every round, the leaders of both forces meet to explain which perks their armies will have during the level. You get 2 each time, but the enemy can get in upwards of 5 at a time, perfect. This can go from them equipping all the foes with deadly bows and arrows, laser swords, reviving some fallen enemies, turning them into vampires, and sadly what you get isn't anywhere near as cool. Oh boy, I can be like 5% bigger, making it harder to evade attacks, or shoot lasers out of my eyes that are next to pointless when fighting on terrain that isn't completely flat. But I appreciate the idea, I guess. With a game as visually and, as we're gonna soon see, mechanically repetitive as Snow Day, this card system does a pretty good job at making each run feel a little varied. You can even see in the hub world with Butters that there's a bunch of rule cards in here. I feel like I only saw the same 5 or 6 throughout my time with it, but I'm sure they're neat. What further builds upon this is the Jimmy and Henrietta pit stops you can get to throughout each stage. They're everywhere, only able to be interacted with after wiping out each horde of enemies, which makes it really infuriating when the area is massive and some random kid is hiding around somewhere. AI most likely busted and unaware of where to go, and so now you need to run all around the place looking for him. Or just pray they eventually despawn. I have no idea why that would keep happening. Anyways, with Jimmy you can equip one of 3 cards, each of them giving you a different permanent perk, such as adding a grind point to your fart move, which I find useful. Even better when you stack them and get a card that allows your farts to suck enemies right below you, setting them up perfectly to be crushed. There's a different set of perks depending on which weapons and power-ups you choose to go into battle with. There's unfortunately only a grand total of 3 melee and 3 long-range weapons, but they all feel pretty different even if I wish there were more. Guess I gotta wait for the Season Pass update. Boy, video games sure are fun, but the sheer amount of upgrades you can obtain for each weapon, again, helps with giving it some variety. And you can even use your toilet paper to make the card a higher rarity, increasing whatever the effect is for a bit. For example, I can get a card that adds a Tesla coil effect onto my fire wand, making it incredibly overpowered, or increase the range of my health totem. You can equip a lot more powers with token after unlocking them, but unfortunately I thought that the 2 default options, health and the fart escape, were more than useful enough for me to justify not trying any of the others out. Maybe if I didn't unlock them so far in that I was already used to what I had and didn't want to risk switching them out for reasons I will get into later. On the opposite end, Henrietta's tarot cards are usually used for getting you ready for the next phase of the battle, like replenishing your bullshit card uses or getting more toilet paper for your next Jimmy encounter. This is the best aspect of the game in my opinion, and something that I wish I could see all of. But again, only 5 stages, so fuck me, I guess. Something I'm really beginning to notice as I play through the first stage, however, is that the enemy variety fucking sucks. Just the same kids copy and paste it all over the place, which would be a little more excusable if they recorded more than 5 lines of dialogue for him. Don't get me wrong, it was a sweet idea for Matt and Trey to let their kids voice the enemies in Snowday. Trey uses his daughter so often in the main show that I could recognize her voice anywhere, but by God, it gets old. If it were just for a couple enemies, or hell, even just stuck to one enemy type, then I'd be fine with it, who cares? But they are everywhere, oftentimes repeating the same lines over each other constantly. It doesn't help in each battle feeling incredibly repetitive, which is definitely not further helped by the combat. You can do all of 3 things in Snowday: a basic combo, your long-ranged weapon of choice, and a jumping attack. That's all you're going to be doing here throughout each and every level. With Stage 1, it seems like they're trying to make the variety come from your objective, like this part where you find Roundy trapped underneath Stark's pond, needing to find gas and the keys for a truck to help him escape. But it's just a glorified fetch quest. The game may as well be sending you on a linear path because getting these items equates to nothing more than just wiping out every enemy in an area and taking it off whoever's back it was attached to. And it's not like you have the freedom to just rush in, steal the item, and run out of there. You know, it being your choice whether or not you want to kill all the enemies and be rewarded with a card from Jimmy at the end. No. Because despite Cartman constantly telling you to stop what you're doing and grab the item,
Pick up that loot and let's get back to fighting the elves.
I'm working on it! But once you have the thing, a new mission pops up at the top of the screen informing you that you still have to defeat everyone! Meaning I now have to make my way all the way back to the start of the area and fight through everyone again! Which I didn't do on the way because I wanted Cartman to stop fucking yelling at me! Not having a good time, gonna be real. Got that right. This wouldn't be a huge deal or anything, but these levels drag out for ages. Just the same waves of enemies over and over again for what feels like an eternity. It never feels as if there's any progression for so long because you're just fighting endless waves of the same bad guys in the same fucking locations. I'm only on the first level yet it feels like it's been going on for an hour with no end in sight. I make long levels if you want, whatever, as long as it's fun. But if you know your stage is this fucking long, then the one thing that you definitely wouldn't want to do to evoke fatigue in your player is to convey to them how long they've been doing this for by having the music end. You sit in silence for a bit, and then the song starts from the beginning again. That is inexcusable. This is some Crash the Wrath of Cortex shit right there. And God, the sound design is a fucking whole other issue. Not only does it have that glorious repeating music, but we've also got some truly terrible sound effects in here, like the fucking Minecraft walking sound while traveling on ice. But on top of all that, for almost every single cutscene here, the audio is completely out of sync.
They're my secret army. We're attacking you before you attack us.
What are you talking about?
My spies saw your army gearing up for battle.
Your spies? What the fuck are you talking
Yeah,
about?
your spies, Kyle. They're your spies are getting ready for battle.
This is a constant throughout most of the game, not to mention the terrible mixing. I don't know if it's because they recorded last-minute lines at home or something, but sometimes the characters sound like they're talking through a fucking tin can. Even worse is they attempt to have the characters speak and come off as if they're in the room with you, especially while wearing headphones, and so certain characters can only be heard from one side. But they didn't bother mapping it to whatever side the character is physically standing on. Again, you're only going to notice this if you're wearing headphones. Where's the Racon sponsor when I need it? But at the start of the level, we have Kyle on the left side and Cartman on the right. Would only make sense for Cartman's voice to come from the right side and Kyle's to come from the left. Right? Left. But no.
Check this out. Lasers!
Explosive arrows!
Was this a rush job? Why did it come out like this? You'd at least think with the little amount of content present here, it would at the very least be polished. And I can't believe I failed to mention this at all so far, but you're not alone in this adventure. No! Instead, there is mandatory co-op, with the requirement of you having 3 players with you during your run. I never bothered trying out the matchmaking since I don't want that to affect my impressions or anything, and God knows I don't have 3 friends willing to drop $30 on this shit, or 3 friends. But thankfully, if you don't have real people to play with you, the game will automatically assign you 3 AI characters, and boy, they sure don't help at all. They more often than not just stand around and do a couple attacks maybe, then they die. Now I have to stop what I'm doing because Cartman won't stop chastising me by not reviving my teammate, and find a way over to them for an epic Fortnite revive. All while avoiding the enemies because God knows if I perish, these fuckers aren't gonna be jumping in front of no bullets for me. Too busy staring at the fucking sun doing a whole lot of nothing. Whatever, it at least appears that I'm approaching the end of the stage. Fucking finally, it's only taken an hour. Where you get ambushed under Stark's Pond by the elves. And God, does it suddenly make sense why that chose to rarely lock you inside enclosed areas? Because, well, look at this! It's a visual mess not helped by every single character bleeding together. At least in an RPG, most of the kids being used from the CMBS didn't affect anything since it was clear where everything was. You're here, enemy here, go. But here it's just a bunch of bobbleheads whacking together. I can't tell what's going on or if I'm winning or not, especially because my stats just fucking disappeared, thank you! Oh God, fuck no, not now. My controller just fucking disconnected because my fucking dog stood on my remote while it was plugged in and busted the cords and it just switches off randomly. Thanks, dog. Fuck, I died. Oh my gosh, shit, please, please. My AI companion, if there were any time for you to function, it would be now, please, I am begging you. What the fuck? Okay, no big deal. I guess. I'll just respawn at the last checkpoint and...
Don't let your ass get kicked by the fucking elves again, man. I have a reputation to protect.
I have to do the whole thing over again? There are no checkpoints in these hour-long stages? Of course, why would there be? I think I'm going to bed. And that was my first experience with South Park Snow Day. Didn't leave a stellar first impression. Originally, I was planning on powering through all this in one sitting, but I think they've made it clear that that is not the way to go unless I want to end up putting my fucking head through a wall. This is why I never wanted to experiment with weapons or power-ups, because I know that if I pick a bad combo without knowing, I would potentially have to replay hours worth of gameplay. And as I lay awake there trying to comprehend what the fuck I just played, one thought couldn't leave my head. What happened here? I talked about it earlier, but Matt and Tress seem to have such confidence behind their previous gaming projects, even during their Comic-Con panel where they could not seem more downtrodden. Trey claiming to perpetually be in the state he's in right before a new episode releases where he worries it's the worst thing he's ever made. But it's clear that it came from a place of care. He wanted it to be good and for his efforts to pay off so badly that the thought of folks not liking it made him miserable. But here? I don't know, I just don't see it. I remember first hearing about this game when Matt and Tress signed on for that $900 million deal with Paramount to start making the specials for them for the next 7 years. I think this video game was a part of that contract. And honestly, it makes total sense why there seems to be such a lack of passion behind this project if that's the case. Stick of Truth came from their desire to redeem their reputation in the video game market and make something they would have wanted to play. Fractured But Whole came from their attempt to take criticism from the Stick of Truth into account, wanting to top themselves. Whereas Snow Dash seems to have come from signing a contract saying they would. The brunt of the work here seems to be on THQ Nordic's end, with Matt and Trett checking in every now and then to give input. Not being able to dedicate all their time to it because not only are they busy having to make a season of South Park each year, but also 2-hour-long specials, and they just got done opening their new restaurant, which seems to have taken up most of their focus over the past couple years. Now, THQ Nordic are a talented studio, sure. I'm incredibly excited for their upcoming Epic Mickey remake, but at the same time, I think the overall plan for Snow Day seems way more ambitious than anything they've attempted before. See, South Park Snow Day is not just your regular game, it's this terrible little thing known as a live service game. This is the last thing I would have expected from them, considering Tress seemed very adamant during the Stick of Truth's release date that DLC was lame and that they didn't want to do it.
And everyone kept saying that word to us, not word, that phrase to us, not phrase, those letters to us, DLC. And they're like, oh, just make a DLC. I agree, fuck that.
There's a few ideas along the way that we've kind of peeled off and said, okay, we're gonna make that like DLC.
Fresh but Whole had a couple pieces, but at the very least it was an entirely new story. It felt like a worthy add-on. But here, not so much. Live service is basically just DLC, but it's sprinkled out to you over the course of however many months, with the payment being made up front, of course. Buy the content first, then decide if it was worth your money. And the best part is, because it's part of an existing game, no refunds. Better play it anyway to get your money's worth. This has since become the trend for games, where you release a product with an intentionally small amount of content to bring players in, and then have them purchase a season pass to obtain new content whenever they're done with it. The only problem is, when you make your game like this, you need to make sure it's good enough for people to be willing to shell out more money for more content, whether it be weapons, cosmetic items, or what Snowdead desperately needs more of, levels. With how many games are doing this now, I just can't see South Park Snow Day doing enough new to warrant a majority of gamers adding yet another subscription to their ever-growing list. And with no players buying the season pass, there's less money to put into the game. And less money means less content, and less content leaves you with a husk of something that could have been a lot cooler if they just put more time into it. Enough time to warrant buying it for a full $60. Because while $30 is a good price for a regular game these days, it feels to consider most of these live service games are free, with all the money coming in from the season passes. But with South Park, after buying the season pass, you've now almost spent as much as you would have on an actual AAA release, all for the promise of getting more content later down the line. And with the way things are looking now, all we have by the end of 2024 is more costumes, 2 new weapons, and a new game mode, which presumably won't have a story like the main campaign. So what motivation is for me to keep playing? To rise the leaderboards or do battle with my friends? Well, newsflash, the game has been out for a week now, and the player base hasn't managed to crack an all-time peak of not even 4,000 players. That sounds like a lot in theory, but remember, I have to imagine maybe like 5% of these people are going to be invested enough to buy the season pass. What's going to happen a month after the game is released? Or 6 months? Or a year? With a seemingly minimal amount of content being added over the course of the year, I can't imagine it's going to bring in many new players. And it's only a matter of time before the current player base gets bored of replaying the same 5 levels or basic fights against a couple of waves of enemies that they're already fighting in the story mode. Okay, well, whatever. The past is in the past, it's a new day, and I'm going to try to go into this again with an open mind. You know, what's funny is, I didn't even notice there was a whole other side to the hub world here when I first played it, with Craig and Tweaks Bezar for alternate outfits, and oh shit, Mr. Hanky! Feel like it's been forever since we've seen him. He lets you use these dark matter jars you find throughout the levels to upgrade your skill tree, increasing your damage, health, stamina. You know, that's a little interesting, I guess. These slightly higher stats seem to be just what I needed to get through the first level. Honestly, it was no fucking sweat this time, especially after swapping out that dinky-ass bow for a fire attack. I also learned that if you use your fart escape and then shoot the cloud with your fire, it ignites and damages all the enemies in its radius. You know, that's neat. I wish there were more elemental stuff like this, where I can actually think about what would be best for me in the moment. Not to mention, it's, fun and, cool. I did manage to get to the boss fight with Kyle this time, which ended up being the most fun I've ever had so far in this whole thing. I don't like that he has the power to teleport all over the bloody place at will, but the mechanics in Snow Dash seem much more intuitive and enjoyable when I'm aimed at a single foe with a set amount of patterns I can learn and figure out what would be best for me in the moment. Also, the first time in the game that I actually laughed. That's something.
Fuck you, Cartman.
I think maybe the reason why folks are criticizing this game's comedy is sadly, once again, because of the RPGs. Obviously, those things are going to be jam-packed with cutscenes and dialogue and jokes, meaning there's more opportunity to make you laugh. You know, they could shoot out 20 jokes to you in a minute and at least one was bound to be funny. Compared to Snowdale, which cutscene amount peels in comparison. So of course there's going to be less opportunity to make you laugh, and when a joke fails to land, you gotta sit on it for like an hour till the next cutscene arrives. After beating Kyle, we're informed that he actually didn't plan any attack on Cartman, and that Stan is the one behind this endless winter, apparently having gone mad. And so now with Kyle on our side, it's off to see what's up with him. From here, each level, despite not breaking out of the snow theming, at least makes an effort to explore a different area in town. We visit the rooftops of Main Street, Hell's Pass Hospital, the ruins of Soda Sopa. Shit, I wish there were more of that near the beginning. Level 3 and 5 in particular I think are real highlights because there's a way more clear goal in mind, both of which have you scaling to the top of buildings. Makes it feel like you've actually progressed the further you get up and see how far the drop below is. It's not a vast improvement or anything, you're still just whacking the same crowds of enemies for the most part, but there's a lot of little things that I'm starting to notice about this that I kinda like. My throat's fucking dying. Like realizing all the characters are gonna have their own unique factions with different designs representing the character. Well, except for Kenny. As we soon see Stan deploy her to defeat you. Stan moving on to the next level as Kenny now represents the flag stolen in Mission 2. Little Liam, but whatever, it was still fun. Again, the one-on-one fights are my favorite part of Snow Day by a long shot. Something worth commenting on is how I think as the game goes on, the graphics and designs of these locations are given much more opportunity to impress. I think these levels look best when there's a bunch of colored lights surrounding you in the night. It contrasts nicely against the snow and it almost makes certain levels stand apart from others. Almost. Really, my biggest issue at this point in how Snowdale looks would have to be the character models themselves. When translating the characters to 3D, you're going to end up losing a lot of that charm. If anything, this game just ends up looking like a fully realized version of that old South Park Xbox game that got cancelled. They can't stand at 3/4 angles, and so you're always staring at their slapped-on sticker face, with their eyes wrapping around their heads, along with their silhouettes being seriously hindered. Like, look at Kyle's trapper hat, I just learned it had a name. It doesn't stick out nearly enough, he looks way too boxy, along with Butter's hair having to fall flat in his head instead of sticking out. Reminds me of these Liam BB toys I had as a kid. It's the best they could do, and it's clear that with South Park Studios being enlisted to animate every single cutscene so the 3D animators could use it as a reference, you know, there was a lot of effort in here to make it faithful to the show, but it just didn't work out too well in my opinion. Not bad, but not good. I wonder if in the future they could try and emulate a Mickey Mouse ear effect when appropriate, giving features like Butter's hairdo or Stan's puffball the ability to follow the camera, making sure it's always front-facing. Who knows how that would look in practice though, I ain't no fucking 3D modeler. Or hell, just make the game look like the newest intro to the show they've been using for like a decade now. It looks fantastic and I'm sure folks would love a playable version of that. It would look fantastic. But I understand that probably would entail yet again changing the genre, but I wouldn't be shedding a tear over it. Well, anyways, after defeating Stan, we learn that he's been put under what's essentially mind control, filling him with rage. And just what's been doing all this? Or who?
Ever since I got that dark matter stuff from Mr. Hanky, I just felt like different and...
What did you say?
I got this dark matter stuff from my axe, and I just felt so powerful that I thought I could...
From Mr. Hanky? The Christmas boo?
Yeah.
Don't you guys remember? Mr. Hanky was kicked out of town. By the entire town. Everyone turned on him.
Wait, what the fuck? Oh, that's right, I completely forgot that Mr. Hanky got kicked out of the show like 6 years ago. Finally, we're getting a follow-up to that random episode for some reason. 6 years later. Honestly, this perked me right back up. The game's story finally showing a spark of life. With the boys realizing that Mr. Hanky has returned for revenge on the town, poisoning everyone with his dark shit, it's shit, right? It's gonna be shit. Cartman even briefly betrays the group to join forces with Mr. Hanky, never wanting to return to school, which made for a fun double twist. That stage kind of fucking sucks though. All the enemies by this point are getting really strong, with poisoned adults now joining among the fighting children. But I mainly hate it because once again, they fucking act as if you can skip past all the enemies when you're still expected to beat them all. When we find Eric, the mission thing tells you to catch Cartman, and this fucker can run. And so I'm chasing him all the way to the end of the area. He gets away because it's an automated sequence, and that tells you that you can't progress until you defeat all the enemies. But you told me to catch Cartman. Whatever, the Bullrog fight at the end was really cool, even if that's not Bullrog, but whatever. Honestly, if they wanted to make this game bigger and, honestly, better, why couldn't it just have been a single-player adventure with each main kid in town getting their own level with them as the final boss? Each kid has separated into their own army, and the only way to bring them to yours as the new kid is to kick their ass. Not just the main 4 boys either, Craig, Tweak, Jimmy, Tolkien, I don't know, Timmy even. The more you play, the more you wind up building your own clan of South Park kids, with you being able to swap out 3 at a time, kinda like Freshed but Whole, each kid having different skills and attributes. Basically, what I'm saying is, South Park Kingdom Hearts. Admittedly, the combat does get better as you go on though, once you begin getting more Jimmy card options for your new weapons. It's really easy to get overpowered in a level if your luck is right. But thankfully it's balanced enough to where you getting a bad selection doesn't automatically mean you won't have a chance. And the more I go on and the more I start to get a handle of this cycle they're going for, the more I'm finding myself actually starting to enjoy this. Unfortunately, however, the Mr. Hanky boss fight at the end was a bit of a letdown. The design is cool, and I like that the goal is to get toilet paper off the little ones and shoot it at him from cannons, but it goes by way too quick and ends super anticlimactically. Either way, with that, the game is over. Even ends by giving a conclusion to that Mr. Hanky stuff, with Jesus kinda just showing up to express disappointment for them for not being more willing to forgive Mr. Hanky for all those problematic tweets that he made. And with that, they apologize and everyone is friends again, huzzah. Mr. Hanky now willing to make it a snow day whenever the boys want, which I find to be a fun way of letting the game have a definitive ending while giving an in-universe reason for why it continues to snow. I'm losing my voice from all that screaming earlier. Saying that though, there's nothing really to do now. You're informed there's this Nicole thing, random character, where you can find her in levels and get to do something. It claims it will make things super hard, but I'm not sure if that's the entire level or just certain parts. I don't really feel like finding out, and I've not seen a single YouTube video showing it off, so I guess that's it, right? For now, at least. I can't say I'm surprised how short it was, again, given the price tag, but 5 levels? I can't get past that. Snow Day feels as if it's ending right when it's starting to begin. It feels as if there's so much untapped potential here, especially given how much enjoyment I got out of the last couple levels. I really think Snow Day is at its best when it's leaning into what little variety it can offer. Like Stage 3 giving you specific missions like lighting yourself on fire while lighting these beacons up the tower, or again 5 having you travel up the hospital. Snow Day works when it's disguising the fact that you're basically just mashing the same 2 button combos for 5 hours. But unfortunately, I don't think it reaches that potential very often. I wish this game could have been made in a day where live service stuff wasn't the trend. Hell, I think if this was released on the PS2 in the 2000s, it would have been one of those games that tries to shove in as many different styles as it can. Driving, combat, shooting, collectathon, all of which would be equal amounts of mediocre. But in this day and age, in 2024, games just don't seem to be that simple anymore. Now you have to buy season passes to truly get your money's worth. And if not, then try to get some enjoyment out of the same 5 levels over and over. Have at it. I just can't see this game being very successful enough to make more story content. I haven't seen a single soul talking about this game unless it's to say how bad it is. The only audience here is existing South Park fans, whereas I'd argue anybody could love The Stick of Truth or Fractured But Whole, simply because they're good games. But at the very least, I hope this doesn't deter Matt and Trev from trying their hand at another video game in the future. If anything, I hope this gives them the motivation to want to improve upon what didn't work about this one. But can you realistically start development on another project while expecting folks to continue spending money on the last one? Or do you just call it quits and move past it while pissing off the people who did bother spending the season pass money on Snow Day? They've put all their eggs in one basket, and with how busy the duo seem to be, along with frankly just being a lot older now, you know, The Stick of Truth is 10 years old, I'm really uncertain what the future for South Park games hold. But at the very least, I pray that this isn't what they go out on. Despite having a good bit of fun with the latter half of Snow Day, I definitely wouldn't recommend it to anyone. The only people who would want to play this thing have already bought it realistically. There's just not enough here to warrant the price, along with there being just much better things to play right now. And so with that, that's it.